Hello everyone and welcome to the mill. I'm Carol, and this week, if you hadn't noticed, Expeditions has been quite the buzz over social media and YouTube. So, as you're anticipating and hopefully getting ready for your copies to come this summer, what I wanted to help you out with was maybe some tips and reminders for that first game. Because I definitely noticed when I was playing my first game with my friends, there were some parts where we're like, oh wait, how do we do that? What do we do? So I thought maybe I could help you out with those first game reminders. So I'm gonna go and get the camera to the table and show you a little bit better of what I'm talking about. All right, so now that we're looking at the Expeditions board, what you can see here is here's the edge of the base camp and here's my mech.
Hello.
And what you have right here is you have your southern locations that start completely flipped over. Now, one great piece about Expeditions is getting some of those combo-tastic turns, which is something you definitely can do when you look at the synergies between where parts are on the map and your character cards and your mech abilities. So, for instance, one thing I definitely recommend looking at first is looking at your character when you're thinking about your first move. For instance, when you have Anako and Jiro, all right, you can see that on your first turn you get to do your move, play, and gather. So if I'm looking at a first move, I can see from these two cards, if I get a yellow or a blue, I can immediately play them and be able to activate them. So probably something that I want to look for on my first turn is a way to be able to do this. Now, if you're in a big game, you might not be able to. But for instance, let's say I had Anaka here, and it says I can gain a face-up meteorite or solve. I'm not going to be solving quite yet, but we do have some meteorites on the board. So I need a yellow worker, so I can move 1 to 3. So on a first move, I'm probably going to go over here and then grab my yellow worker. Then I'll just move my mat over here for a second. All right. All right, so I've already moved. I've gathered with my yellow worker. Now I can play Akiko? Sorry, I'm totally mispronouncing this. And that would give me my 1 power since I haven't solved any quests yet. And I can use that yellow worker I just got so I can gain this face-up meteorite. This is kind of what I mean by kind of start looking for those combos, start looking for those synergies right off the bat. All right, and this would come over now into my played card area. So that's one of my first recommendations when you're looking at those moves. Okay, another great one to look at if I'm looking at Olga and Changa here. Olga, when you activate her, gets you a blue worker. So potentially if I had her, I could have gone here, gone a green worker, activated her, and then gone a blue worker to put on my mech mat in this turn. So that's another great combo. Or Changa lets you gain an exposed benefit from an adjacent location. Do you want to say, I have a little guy here, you want to say hi, Luca?
Hi, Luca.
Hi. All right, I have a little helper today. So that's a great way. If I would have played, if I would have played Changa first, I could have gotten an extra worker as well, or gotten a card because that would have been adjacent. So let's say that you have more than one player here. So let's say it's your turn and these are both already taken. You have this option, and this one lets you activate an adjacent location, so you still could get a worker if you wanted. Another great option might be this one here will get you a card that you can pick from anywhere. So if I still have these cards out, I could look, does my character or my mech really do well for meteorites? There's a meteorite on the board in this case, or an item. Or another thing you might want to work on is if you're looking at your base camp here, and you're looking at these quest multipliers, you can see you at the very least during this game are going to want to complete 2 quests, because you're going to want to at least get to that 8 multiplier. Now, you don't necessarily need these right away, but that's something to keep in mind. So another thing to look at is when I'm looking at these cards is the locations of the quests. So for instance, this one is for location 2. Location 2 is already out. It's a starting location in the south. That one's pretty easy. So maybe I want to get a quest early that would be easy to get. Or you might have cards where, like for instance this one, if you have 1 meteorite array melded, you start getting more power. So those are more little pieces to look for. How can you make your engine more powerful? Whether it's getting glory right away, getting meteorites right away. So start looking for those combinations off the bat. All right, another piece to kind of keep in mind when you start the game is when you see people's mechs, you might be thinking, oh my gosh, how overpowered is that? But all of them kind of are. And that's going back to having combos and trying to take advantage of them. For instance, I'll say for Odin's Wrath, which personally is my favorite mech here. For Odin's Wrath, my friend who had it the first time we played wasn't so sure about the you may trash a map at any time on your turn to gain a power, guile, or dollar. However, this one gives you so much flexibility. When I played solo with it, it was perfect for when I just needed 1 more guile or power. So if you're doing Odin's Wrath, you are probably someone who's really trying to get out on this board and explore to get these map tokens, which we're going to come back to those in a little bit here after I kind of go through these mechs. Also, everyone thought this one was absolutely fantastic. You may gain cards directly to your hand. So that can stop you from having to do some of your refresh turns. However, you might be running out of workers at points. It's great and it seems overpowered, but it's not necessarily what you need all the time. All right, so another great one, I believe. Oh, where is he? There's our Highlander. Okay. Another, we also have Tatanka. So this one, we weren't sure, how much would you actually need to solve? Because its powers you may solve, upgrade, and meld up to 5 times each. Which personally I'm like, wow, I can't imagine having enough time to get up to 5 times. However, if you're watching a lot of other content videos, you might have heard some other people say how much they love this and how advantageous it is to be able to upgrade 5 times or meld 5 times. Because you're getting so much more from it. So once again, it's all in perspective, and if you have this one, you're going to want to try to play to that. All right, the Lumberjack. Whenever you vanquish, reduce the cost of the first corruption of each color by 1. This is the one I had in our first 4-player game, and while I wasn't sure it was that advantageous, I definitely used it frequently because you are going to want to get corruption. I'll go back to that in a second after I show you the last one. And this one was also super useful. As you will find, there are times you are going to want to move 4 locations, especially in a crowded game. You are going to be able to move 4 locations. So once again, each one has very strong advantages. So don't automatically think, oh my gosh, somebody has one of these mechs, they're going to totally floor us. That's not going to happen. You each have something that's breaking a rule. Now, going back to why the Vanquish one is important. One thing to keep in mind is when you are scoring glory, 1, getting 7 corruption tokens can get you a glory star. So let's go through this process here. Taking the map token, flipping it over. All right. And the research base there, needing 5. So we have our 4 and 5 here. So 4, 3, now we're above 5. All right, you can't ignore the vanquishing action and getting corruption for a couple reasons. It's not just because you can get glory if you get 7 tokens. Each of these is also worth 2 points each at the end of the game, no matter what number's on them. So you want to do this. The game is encouraging you to essentially be a good mech, be a good person and companion. You want to clear corruption from the land. So don't ignore these. You are going to want to be vanquishing, because that's where you're going to get a lot of those extra points at the end of the game. All right, and I think that's where I've seen some people in the early stages not go for that. Then they get to the end game scoring and they're not getting those bonus points outside of their glory tokens. So vanquishing, very important. All right, the other thing to keep in mind is, since there are so many combos here, you are going to need to be flexible and be willing to change gears. People in larger games are going to block your spots. All right, so as I was saying, one thing that I want to kind of show you here is I'm going to recreate a situation that happened in our first game, just because I want to show how important it is to be flexible and keep the end goals in mind. So what happened was, one of my friends uncovered the 20 token over here. Immediately, and I'll move my board here, my player board here so you can see, immediately they notice that me, as we'll say as the Odin's Wrath over here, had the 20 power and guile to get that token, and automatically someone said, well, we all know where Carol's going, and I was going to. But then what happened, as you can see, there was a spot blocked here I would have to stop at. There were people here, then people here, and then they were moving. And initially I tried to get over there, and I'm like, I'm going to waste way too much time getting over there. And I realized that I already had like 4 of these corruption tokens. I had multiple stars too. So I'm like, wow, I could vanquish here. Sorry, I have a cat helping us here. I could vanquish tiles here, and then if I came over here and vanquished both of these, if I used my animal companion, the animal companions let you take the bottom benefit if you do the final corruption. So instead, I gained my last corruption, was able to then boast about it, put my star out on the base camp for having 7 corruption tokens, and trigger the end of the game, and never had to even think about the 20. Here's Selenia. She is in charge. As I've put on Instagram, this game is not cat proof at all. They love it. Okay, so that's what I mean. You have to be thinking about, okay, I might need to pivot, and that's fine. And that's the beauty of having so many different end game conditions. Don't get set on, oh my gosh, I have to be the only person who gets the 20, or I have to get these. You need to be flexible. More than likely, you're going to get the 7 workers or the 5 maps, depending upon which strategy you go with. If you have Odin's Wrath, you are probably going to get to those 5 map tokens quite quickly. Just make sure you don't spend them before you boast about them. All right, 8 cards, maybe, because those 8 cards, and this is another good reminder, those 8 cards have to be in your hand or your active area. If you've melded those cards or solved those quests, they don't count for that achievement anymore. All right, corruption tokens, that's a good one to get, because as I said, if you have 7 corruption tokens, not only are you getting the star to boast about it, but you're also getting 14 points there at the end of the game, if not more, if you get more of them. All right, other thing to note, if you're looking at the melding or the upgrading, all right, if you have items, you only score the points in the corner of the item cards if you have upgraded them by the end of the game. So that's another piece to keep in mind. Another reason why you might want to upgrade. You're getting some end game points there as well. Okay, also if you upgrade them, you're constantly getting this piece here. Something to remember is that once you have played this and you have that worker down in your active area, this is constant. This part here, that's only on when you first play them. But if you have the worker here, this is going to stay in play as you're going. As soon as it's in your hand, it's not. But when it's in your active row, you get to use that. And if you upgrade it, that is constantly an ability. So really, once again, you have an engine going, and so you want to try to look for those synergies. Our thing to note is you have a variety of cards that want different workers. I remember my last game, I really wanted, I think it was a blue worker, and it was always blocked. All right, so you might need to pivot once again. You can try to get some workers. If you end up with a lot of yellow workers, start looking for yellow worker cards. Play to your strengths, play to what comes to you, and that's very much a big part of expeditions and something to remember in your first game. Now the cat has completely messed up my play area. So kind of her. All right, cat not included with the game, but if you have one yourself, I'm sure they'll be more than willing to knock all the pieces over for you. So all right, a last piece I want to remind you of is the refresh turn. Don't be afraid, especially early on, to take that refresh, because if you go to refresh, yes, you're skipping a turn, but now next time you get to do all three, so you get an overpowered turn. So really you're only sacrificing one action. So it's not a bad thing when you have to do this. However, there are cards that will let you refresh other cards. So keep that in mind. There are ones that will let you rescue, and those can be handy. And don't, so I bring out the Crater Rim over here, the sweep action is very valuable. As I said, you're looking for combos. So you might have a bunch of cards out here and you might be looking, none of those do me any good. Don't be afraid of the sweep action. It's on some of your card actions, I believe, or it's on this tile. That is not a bad thing. And especially here, this Crater Rim, that lets you sweep all these cards and then refresh your hand. That's important. So if you're not seeing what you need or something you can make work, don't forget about this. So this is in the central area if you're looking for that tile. Another piece that I think is easy to forget is the riverside piece here. So this one lets you take something from an adjacent location, but it says one piece. So what's important, I didn't realize on my first game, it took me a minute. So if I'm here, I could take the green or the red worker, a card. This is, I believe, 2 cards from the pot draw pile, and then you choose one. If I'm choosing here, I would only get 1 guile, not 2. You get 1 thing. All right. Whereas if I was this guy and I was here, I would get the 2. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. That's an easy piece to forget. The other reminder that I would like to put in is that when that end game is triggered, everyone gets 1 last turn, including the person who triggered it. So something that's different from Scythe, from people who are coming over and like, oh, some of these pieces look so familiar. That part's different. So keep that in mind. All right. And then your end game scoring here is on your base camp. So any coins you have in hand. All right. Your multiplier, kind of like the popularity. So based on how many quests you have solved, all right, notice you only need 3 to get to the 10-point multiplier, even though 4 is nice because 4 is what you need to be able to boast about it and put a star down. Okay, so at the very least you want to get to 2, as I said earlier. 3 is even better. So that's where your end game scoring is coming from. Any upgrades that you actually upgraded, you get the coins in the corner. And as I was emphasizing earlier, don't neglect vanquishing to get those corruption tokens, because it doesn't matter what they are. They are 2 coins each, including the 20. The 20 is only worth 2 coins at the end of the game. However, this is the only one that is limited to 1 person when you're talking about boasting. Anyone can get these. Only 1 person can get the 20. All right. So those are some of my tips and reminders. One more piece, if you think this setup at that zoomed in view is sufficient enough for playthroughs, please let me know in the comments. I know on the Discord a lot of people have been asking about playthroughs, which I've personally never done before, but this is approximately the setup I can get. I could get probably a little bit more up, but if that's something you're interested in, please let me know, and thanks for watching the mill.